So on to session 2, I'm going to talk here about managing change and managing change within your team. You should have watched a little video just before we started this session, and I just want to emphasize a couple of points that it made. It said that businesses must adapt, and change is inevitable nowadays in all business environments, but it often comes with uncertainty, poor communication, power battles resulting in chaos, which they outlined. The threat is not changing. The dinosaurs, many organisations that we've seen go in retail, for example, who didn't change, and it emphasises in the video about communication being the key, and we've talked about that in Unit 303. So some of those things you might need to go back and look at, or you might remember and bring into your thoughts on change. We talked in those units before that we've done around managing people, about people relationships, about supporting people, and these are the sort of areas we're going to discuss and that were highlighted in the video as we go through talking about how we manage change in our teams. So before we get into the details, we'll just cover the aims and objectives for this session. The aim is to know how to manage change within a team. And by the end of this session, you should be able to describe the positive and negative impacts that change can have within a team. And you should also be able to describe the techniques that could be used to support the team through change. So let's start having a look. We finished up in the last session when we were talking about organisational strategy and operational plans, about talking about how things were changing. And I think we've established in previous units and in that change is inevitable in business if we're going to be successful. As the video talked about, it's talking about adapting to the environment and the things that are going around the business. And it's probably true in life as well. We all need to adapt and change, and as we also discussed, humans are great problem solvers, and we talked about that in Unit 316 on problem solving, and change is really about problem solving and finding solutions. We've mentioned that change can sometimes affect some people, and if some people it can send them into a complete tailspin, and they focus on all the negative aspects. They become fearful, they're stressed, and they become generally uncertain. And that can create great friction in the team because people deal with things differently. So one person's feeling that, other people are focusing on the positive effects, and they're thinking about the opportunities for development and improvement, the personal growth, the potential it could have in making the team more effective and improving their team practices. And they're both natural, and some people will feel a bit of both. It's not about feeling that, it's about the way we deal with them and the different ways that people react. And it's about recognizing that it can be a roller coaster of emotions, which in the team is going to affect performance. As I said before, can cause friction. Some people aren't going to understand why other people feel like they do, and generally that can cause an overall imbalance. It's all about emotions, and in the next slide we'll look at how that impacts. So, all about emotions, and I started to mention there the change curve, which is a recognised theory or model about change. I like to call it, as I put in brackets there, the roller coaster, because I think it shows the roller coaster, as you can see by the ups and downs there, of people's emotion, and it talks about how change and what people exhibit. So we start off at the beginning. People get anxiety and they start to think, can I cope when they hear about this change? And they worry. And then they go through, or they can go through mixed emotions and thinking, oh yeah, but at least there's some change coming. Some people might go straight to the happiness bit. Oh, at least there's change coming. At last, things have been bad for ages. Other people, as it says right at the bottom at this stage, could just become delusioned and say, I'm off, this is not for me. Okay, so we haven't even really started. We just started talking about the change here at this stage, and we've already got people going off in different directions, and that can really affect a team and their togetherness. Those people who go straight to the happiness, there's a dotted line going off to the top there. It could just be denial. They may just be change. What change? They don't even see it as a change, or they don't even think it needs to be considered. And that can be dangerous as well. And the people who go the opposite way and start fearing it, they can start to see it as a threat. How is it going to affect me? Is it going to impact on my job? They start to blame people or blame themselves, becoming guilty. Did I really do that? Am I really being silly about the way I'm reacting about this change? And it can bring many emotions at that stage. And those people who are in the denial stage won't be able to cope with that. They won't understand what's going on. And the people who are starting to really fear, then feel the threat, then start to blame themselves and start to feel guilty, could either go into that disillusionment bit again and say, right, I'm off, this is not for me, or they can just become totally depressed about the whole situation and feel that it's really, really getting them down. And at that point, they can either start to come out of it with support, or they can start to get into a real hostility stage where they start to feel as if it's all being done to them and it's all about getting at them, and again, going to cause frictions in the team. As we get out of the blame stage and start getting into the gradual acceptance stage, people start to, if given the right support, can start to see a future in things, start to feel that things are going in the right direction, and with the right amount of support, they can go right up and feel that they're moving forward. And quite often in this stage, people will say, well, I always thought this was a good idea, and they won't remember those stages of emotion, which again, for people who haven't found it that easy and haven't accepted that gradual acceptance in the same way, again, that can cause friction because they just don't understand how other people can't remember what they were like, don't see what their side of the argument is, and they really sort of get frustrated by the whole process. So, as we said, it can be a massive roller coaster of emotion, and the change curve sort of shows how people. Now, we have to recognize that everybody could go through these stages. Some people can go through them in a flash. You know, they can go from fear, threat, blame, guilt, and then thinking, right, I can accept this and I can move on quite quickly. Others stages of that can take a long time. And we need, as leaders, to be able to accept that and manage people through the process. And we'll talk about things we can do to support that as we go through the session. So we're going to have periods of change in our teams. And with people and individuals reacting differently, there is going to be some resistance. Barriers or resistance to change can come for a variety of reasons. It could be emotional, previous past experiences, or it could be physical reasons, but it is a natural thing. And I would say resistance is good. Probably going to disagree with me and say it isn't. I want to get this change implemented quickly and smoothly, and this resistance is causing me problems. But that resistance shows that people are taking on board what you said. It does show that they've listened and they're recognizing there is a change, rather than just being oblivious to it and being in denial, as we saw on the change curve. But we have to recognize that people all have different perspectives, experiences, and values, and we'll need to use empathy that we talked about previously. We'll need to use our emotional intelligence that we talked about in 314 and 315 to look past these barriers and to look at what the resistance may be being caused by, because I do not believe, and I always live by this, people don't do things without a reason. That reason may not be correct. Things may not have been communicated to them properly. They may have misunderstood, but to them it is real. And we'll need to work with them to persuade them or convince them, and if not, to reassure them and be there as they go through that change curve.